Listen to this podcast, or I'll gut you.
Welcome back, Horror Hounds, to the Christmas edition of Ghostman and Rivera's Horror Show podcast.
I'm Mike Ghostman Pickle.
And I'm James Rivera. And we here are feeling the Christmas spirit, and we had some Christmas stuff to get to talk about before we launch into our Christmas movies.
Yeah, and the horror genre seems to get bigger with each Christmas season. It seems like more and more Christmas horror comes out, and more people seem to be obsessed with it, including me.
I actually think Christmas horror is one of the strangest subgenres of horror.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to explain, but like Christmas horror movies either like are really festive, where the horror is kind of mild and you get the overriding sense of like the Christmas season, especially something like Santa Jaws, maybe even to an extent Christmas Evil, kind of half and half. But for some reason, I tend to think that Christmas horror movies are a lot more disturbing and messed up than Halloween horror movies. Because Halloween is already supposed to be scary. It's already horror themed. I think there's something about seeing the visuals of Christmas, which is bright and shiny and actually kind of beautiful. I love the Christmas season. But there's something very fascinating and dark seeing it juxtaposed against horrific imagery in movies.
It makes the horror that much more salacious.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite and one of the most fun subgenres of horror.
Yeah, and there's a wide variety of Christmas horror too.
Yeah,
you get some of the stuff that directly deals with the traditions of Christmas, and then you have those that are just Christmas horror because it takes place on Christmas.
And then there are those that really horror movies like kind of like the way that people like to debate whether Die Hard is a Christmas movie or not. I'm not going to get into that debate here, but I feel like with a lot of horror movies, some of them are kind of like Die Hard, where they mostly take place just during the Christmas season. And then some Christmas movies, Christmas is so integral to the plot and the themes of everything that the movie would not function outside of Christmas.
Those are my favorite kinds, the kind that mess around with the folklore and really dive into the traditions of Christmas and just make it that much more wrong.
Yeah. One of my favorites, because we're not going to talk about it because we talked about it so much on this podcast, is Silent Night, Deadly Night. I think that's one of my favorite Christmas horror movies, one of my favorite Christmas slashers. So messed up and it's wrong, but it always puts me in the mood for the Christmas season for some reason, because it's so holiday everywhere all over that movie that it's kind of hard not to watch and go, yeah, I'm ready for the Christmas season, as twisted as it sounds.
There's something oddly wholesome about it too. It's weird.
Yep. So
it has a character. A lot of these movies like this have characters who are dying to be into the Christmas spirit, but people screw it up for them.
Yep. Always. And of course, Black Christmas, probably one of the most iconic Christmas horror movies. All right, now I have a question. Would you agree with me that Silent Night, Deadly Night is more Christmas is more integral to Silent Night, Deadly Night than it is to Black Christmas?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I just wanted to square that away. I seem to notice that.
It really plays around with all the tropes and what Santa Claus actually means to children and how it can be warped. Yeah. And how the idea of naughty and nice can be kind of warped in someone's mind.
Naughty, punish.
And we watched a triple feature. Actually, my birthday was last week, so we had a triple feature of crime movies on my birthday. And then the very next night on the 18th, I had a triple feature where I have these things where every Friday night I show a triple feature of movies, me and my friend Newt. So this time we decided to go all Christmas horror all the way through December. So on this night I played Silent Night, Deadly Night, Better Watch Out, and Rare Exports. So I just wanted to briefly touch on Better Watch Out because I actually discussed that last year when I watched it. I watched it same time as Babysitter, and at the time, I thought they were two very similar movies, but The Babysitter was superior, so I never gave this that much credit.
Mm-hmm.
But watching it a second time, I definitely liked it more the second time.
So it's actually my first time watching Better Watch Out. I really loved it. I liked all the twists. I liked where it went. It definitely had a very mean-spirited, nasty streak to it, and I think the most effective Christmas horror are the ones that have a mean spirit and a nasty streak to it. And it's a home invasion Christmas movie, though I wouldn't want to spoil for the audience what makes this one so unique or what really sets this one off.
Yeah, that one is really hard to discuss what makes it good without discussing the spoiler.
Yeah, but I don't want to discuss that spoiler.
All I can say is there's an extra diabolical character in there that gets more and more diabolical as the movie goes along.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting reaction from the audience when we were watching it. We were watching it with some people, and you could tell it was a lot of people who weren't really as into horror as we are.
Just so the audience knows, it's virtual. We watched it virtually. It was safe social distance.
We didn't watch it with people in person. We've been we started these Friday. Well, I had Friday movie nights in person before, and I really liked that. So then when quarantine came about and we started watching movies ourselves on Cast, on the Cast app with other people, other people started joining in from this quarantine movie group, and it's ended up being a mixed bag of people with a lot of differing opinions. But they hated Better Watch Out. A couple of them just actively hated it. And it's because it has characters that you don't like. And I don't necessarily think that if a movie has characters you don't like, that means it's a bad movie. Mm-hmm. It just means that it's unlikable characters, and I can understand that.
I think for some people it was a too cynical of a movie where none of the characters were really likable. Or I would debate that, but that's besides the point, because I don't really need characters to be likable in order for me to enjoy a movie. I mean, it's nice when I like the characters. I'm not against it, and I'm pretty sure everybody likes liking the characters in the movies they watch. But some of the best movies ever made are about horrible, shitty people. And hey, let's face it, folks, that's what movies are for. You get to travel into a different world that's not your life.
Well, the first time I watched it, I felt the same as some of the other people. Like, you see bad people, like evil people, getting away with things over and over and over again throughout almost the whole movie. Mm-hmm. So I can see how that can anger you, but like with many Christmas horror movies, it needs to be watched every year. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You can appreciate it more with each time. Like, I appreciated it more this time because I knew that character was a diabolical shithead. Mm-hmm. So it was fun watching that character revel in the evil. But
what drew you back to it, Mike? Because you said you weren't a fan of it the first time, but you weren't a big fan of it the first time, and you wanted to see it again for this Christmas triple feature. What drew you back to it?
Because I kind of kept thinking back on it, and I'm like, and after, because like I said, I watched it same time as Babysitter before. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I wonder if I would like it more if I watch it again on its own and watch it, because it really, like many Christmas horror movies, it needs to be a traditional Christmas horror movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It benefits from repeat viewings. Mm-hmm. And when it was unexpected, you know, the evil character getting away with a lot. When it was unexpected, it came off as annoying. Mm-hmm. But now that I knew everything that was gonna happen, it made it much more fun to watch.
Yeah, I definitely could see that.
Especially watching it, getting reactions from people who haven't seen it. And I kind of found it funny at how much people hated it.
So did I.
I the little fucker too.
So did I, but I think I have kind of a dark sense of humor, so I didn't really have very many problems with Better Watch Out like other people did, where people were complaining. I was like, the things you people are complaining about are what makes it a good movie. It's the things that I like about it. I admit it, I sometimes like movies with a mean streak or a nasty spirit to it, but hey, it's just a movie, so I don't really see those complaints.
Yeah, like the killer's a prick. I don't like the killer too. It doesn't mean it's a bad movie. It's actually really well made.
And if you like your killer, then it becomes like a Friday the 13th situation where it's like Jason, where you're cheering to watch the victims get filleted, which is not quite the same thing. And don't get me wrong, I love my slashers. I love my slashers watching that happen. But it's also nice to see a villain, a bad guy that you don't like, because you know that's the idea in the first place. You're not supposed to like them.
Yeah, and it did also suffer from being played right after Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Yeah.
Because it does pale in comparison to Silent Night, Deadly Night, but it's still a really fun, and really polished movie too.
Yeah.
Really polished, solid filmmaking.
Definitely. Better watch out. I enjoyed it. I'm glad I watched it. I'm glad you showed it. It's available on Shudder or Amazon Prime. I know it's on Prime. It is on Prime. I don't know.
Yeah, that one's on Prime.
Yeah, it's on Amazon Prime. It might be on Shudder. I'd have to double check. I think I saw it, but it might. But I know for sure it's on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, so we had that triple feature that night, and the third one was Rare Exports, which we'll discuss later in more depth. But then also on the 23rd is my friend Newt's birthday, so he won tickets to the Beyond Fest double feature of Silent Night, Deadly Night, and Black Christmas. So I'm going to see Silent Night, Deadly Night again, which I don't mind at all, especially at a drive-in setting. That's a perfect drive-in movie. And then, of course, Black Christmas. I don't care how many times I watch that. I always enjoy that one.
The first time I saw both of those movies was on the same night, back to back, at your house some years back, actually. That was the first time I'd seen them both back to back, and I saw them together, and I kind of was appropriate. So ever since then, I watch Black Christmas and Silent Night, Deadly Night every holiday season, along with The Nightmare Before Christmas and Batman Returns.
Oh, cool.
Those are my other Christmas, my unconventional Christmas movies.
And I swear every year the list of things that I want to watch on an annual basis seems to grow. It's like my Christmas is going to be pretty packed if people keep putting out good Christmas horror movies.
I agree.
And we're going to talk about 3 of them this week. The first one is one that we watched with Joe Bob, Christmas Evil. I've been wanting to watch this one. I can't believe I watched it for the first time last night. This was from 1980. It's written and directed by Louis Jackson. It's about an emotionally scarred man with a Christmas fetish who has a breakdown after being belittled at work and decides to determine who is naughty or nice by going on a Yuletide killing spree. And it stars the awesome Brandon Maggart as Harry. It's actually Fiona Apple's dad.
Yes,
singer. Me and James both love Fiona Apple, so that was exciting to watch.
Fiona Apple is an awesome singer. If you don't know who she is, check it out. Yes. And I could see it runs in the talent runs in the family because her dad was a damn good actor in this movie.
That was unexpected. I did not expect such a great acting performance. Not just good, it was great.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, Jeffrey DeMunn as Philip, his brother, was awesome in it. Frank Darabont loves that actor. He was in The Mist and a lot of different Shawshank Redemption and a lot of different Frank Darabont movies.
He's a really recognizable character actor face. Like, if you watch the movie and when you see Jeffrey DeMunn, if you don't know the name, trust me, when you see the face, you've seen him somewhere.
Yeah. And the movie was surprising to me from beginning to end. I was surprised at how good it looked. I was surprised at how good the acting was. I was surprised at how well written it was. Very good script. Some actually profound type of themes that it explores. It's genuinely dramatic. The script is thoughtful and well written, and I couldn't help but compare it to Silent Night, Deadly Night, because this is the first Killer Santa movie 4 years before Silent Night, Deadly Night. So I couldn't help but compare it. So it's not as fun as Silent Night, Deadly Night, but it's much more serious. It's better quality, and the killer is a much better Santa.
Yes, But that's because the killer in this is actually trying to be Santa and is a Christmas fetishist who has a very idealized version of Santa, which is a good contrast to Silent Night, Deadly Night. If you watch them as double features, is that the killer Santa in Silent Night, Deadly Night comes from a perspective of somebody who does not have good memories associated with Christmas, who probably in all actuality hates Christmas and especially hates Santa. So that's what makes the difference. Is the killer Santa in Christmas Evil actually likes being Santa Claus and believes in the Christmas spirit and spreading Christmas cheer.
But both characters, the idea of Christmas was tainted for both of them in different ways.
Yeah.
Like,
So this one's a more childhood Santa trauma. In Silent Night, Deadly Night, it's a little bit more horrific. The trauma comes from seeing his parents, from the killer. The trauma from the killer comes from watching his parents be killed by a man dressed in a Santa outfit on Christmas Eve, and of course raping his mother, which is going to put a very negative view in your head of Santa. This Christmas trauma, not good, but a little bit lighter, not quite as heavy.
well, it starts out straight out wholesome. The thing that warped this guy, because the movie opens, it's Christmas Eve, 1947, and you see Santa coming down the chimney, and then they're reciting a lot of "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," so it's very Christmassy, very wholesome. And then you see the kids huddled on the stairs with their mom, watching Santa put the presents under the tree. And then switch to later on in the night, the kid comes down to look at the Christmas tree again, and Santa's groping his mother in front of the Christmas tree.
And of course, as we all know as adults, Santa is the dad, so it's just mom and dad having a little Christmas fun. From the child's perspective...
This scene right here.
Oh, yeah?
You can see how salacious that looks.
Yeah, for a child especially. What makes that opening scene interesting to me is, you know how you described it as wholesome? It almost comes across as whimsical, because when Santa comes up and down the chimney, it's almost directed in a fantasy style, the way that you would imagine Santa coming up and down your chimney, that you could tell that's based more on a memory than how it probably actually looked. You're seeing that event filter through the memory of the main character, as opposed, like, I highly doubt that he went up the chimney up and down with ease like that, making goofy noises and stuff like that.
Well, I love how the director illustrated that, because there's like a weird jump cut in the editing when it switches to the magical aspect of it that shows Santa whisking up and down the chimney. So the way it's kind of a jump cut shows that that's the child's warped memory kind of jumping in there and showing you the way he sees things. I thought that was really cool. And then after this scene, it cuts to this guy. Everything about this guy is fascinating. It cuts to, the present, and this guy is sleeping in his Santa suit. And I chuckled every time I saw that guy wake up in his full Santa suit. He was just reveling in the spirit of Christmas. And it's almost touching in a way, like you see how much he loves Christmas. You don't get the idea that he's warped by Christmas. You think that he deeply loves it, to the point where he's in the mirror. And I love that part when he's in the mirror and he puts the shaving cream all over his face, and he gets such a kick out of it. It's such an exhilarating sight for him to behold, himself with a big white beard.
And his house is decorated wall to wall with Christmas stuff, and when he wakes up in the morning, he puts his red Christmas records on and starts jumping around. And there's something very almost childlike and innocent about it. So like, where you rarely ever see adults get excited the way that kids do about Christmas, and you see kind of a childish glee. You get the sense that childhood trauma kind of kept him emotionally stuck in a certain state of mind about Christmas. And there's nothing wrong. I love Christmas too, but this guy takes it a bit too far, but there is something innocent about it.
Yeah, he seems obsessive but harmless throughout most of the film. I mean, yeah, you kind of chuckle that he's so obsessive over Christmas, but it seems to have a positive impact on him for the most part, even though he gets a little weird about it.
So it does, and I'm not going to ruin what exactly it is that he's doing. What I like about that opening scene is it shows him in a childlike manner, and like and like the scene that came before it, his childhood trauma. That's how the movie opens up. After you see him get ready, and all of his Christmas stuff, you see him doing something very creepy and very questionable, and you could tell that even though it doesn't necessarily come from a bad place, you just nod your head and I'm like, no, dude, don't do that.
Yeah. And if you agree with me, when you do a Christmas horror, the more Christmassy it is that you make the Yuletide horror, the more wrong it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's perfectly illustrated in this, because it goes beyond Silent Night Deadly Night for me, where it shows like Silent Night Deadly Night shows images of a festive Christmas to go along with images of horrible depravity. But in this one, it shows the Christmas images in a way that they're supposed to be shown. It shows them as very wholesome, very positive thing. And then to see that slowly warp into something negative as the movie goes, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was really cool that he's not only obsessed with being Santa Claus, he's obsessed with the idea of determining whether kids are naughty or nice. So you see him like salaciously like staring at families outside their house and determining, you know, oh, that kid's on her bed playing with a doll. Oh, she's so sweet and nice. I'm going to put her in the nice book. And it sees this kid looking at a Penthouse magazine. He's like, that kid's going in the naughty book. Arr. So every time he sees a kid doing something naughty, they go down in the naughty. So he goes back refers to the book and sees all the naughty things that these kids have done before he decides to snap.
And his version of Santa, what I found very interesting, is more based on the original idea of Santa Claus. Because Santa Claus is supposed to be a figure of joy around the Christmas season, yes. But we also have to remember that Americans, and particularly the Coca-Cola Company, really changed the image of Santa Claus, especially for the United States and just basically mostly for this country, where the original conception, the folklore around Santa Claus is that, yeah, he's a jolly guy. He dresses up in his red suit and he delivers Christmas to all good boys and girls. But in the original folklore, Santa also punishes the kids who are bad. And in some cases, he actually kidnaps children and eats them. And this goes into like German folklore, and we'll get into that a little later too. But a lot of more European folklore surrounding Santa Claus is a dichotomy figure where on the one hand he's jolly and he's spreading cheer, and on the other hand if you're bad or you're not into the Christmas spirit, you're not a decent person, you're going to get punished, sometimes in a brutal manner. And some of the original stories about Santa Claus are a little bit scary, kind of like how America doesn't have Krampus. It's probably a little bit too sinister for our culture. We want to make we tend to emphasize only like the soft and the nice things about Christmas, which is nice. But it's kind of cool that this movie kind of gets back to the original idea of Santa Claus as he was supposed to be perceived.
Yeah, and it makes this guy feel like he's in the right. Everything he does, no matter how bad it is. And then I love the use of Christmas music in this, because a lot of the Christmas music is displayed through the guy humming it. Mm-hmm. And he actually hums it really good. It's pleasant songs to listen to when this guy's humming it. Like, it sounds nice.
It does.
But then even that, it's a slow transition from even him humming the Christmas songs. Seems very wholesome, very, very positive at first. But then he's humming Santa Comes to Town as he snaps. Mm-hmm. And you can see it within the scene. Within the scene, it starts out, he's humming the Santa's Coming to Town. He's humming it and he's happy. And then it turns obsessive, and then he keeps thinking back on his childhood trauma. And then by the time he finishes humming that song, you can tell he's completely snapped.
Yeah.
So, I love that dynamic.
What I liked is that the movie is basically as a series of events, as have most Christmas slashers with the killer Santa would basically have the Santa Claus going from house to house, punishing and being punishing anybody who's naughty. That's the typical idea of a Santa slasher. In this one, he goes out, he steals from toy companies, he shows up at a children's hospital, and much to the delight of the staff there, and I believe it's a hospital for disabled children, and he
Yeah.
comes and he gives them a bunch of gifts. He spreads joy. He does the whole ho ho ho, the entire bit, and there's something like a little bit heartwarming about it, and there's something I don't know, dare I say a little bit heroic, because he basically takes this toy company who he's working for, but he realizes that the toy company is using a PR campaign just to give themselves a positive image, like they're actually like giving toys to different children's hospitals, when that's not really what they're doing. So he makes them actually do it. And I think the line that makes me laugh is when they say, "Where did this all come from?" And he goes, "Oh, it's just from some people who didn't know how generous they could be." And then he starts doing the ho 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 laughter. If you were watching this in your house and your family walked in just on that scene, they probably think you're watching a heartwarming Christmas tale. But in the very next scene, there is a bloodbath and slaughter that happens very abruptly and very brutally and very shockingly, and it kind of is like, oh man, it's that constant dichotomy between warm, happy Christmas cheer, him doing things that you could actually kind of root on, and then doing something unspeakably awful, and it gives the movie this kind of weird feeling. Definitely not what you would expect from a typical like killer Santa slasher.
Yeah, it's a multiple murder right in the street in front of everyone. I think he kills like 4 people brutally.
Yeah.
And like you said, it comes right after he visits this hospital for these children, and the children of the neighborhood love him. Even the adults of the neighborhood love him because he looks like a cool traditional Santa Claus. And the way he carries himself, he's got the ultimate, he's got the laugh, he's got the voice, he's got the ho, ho, ho. If that guy showed up at a party that I was throwing, I'm like, now this dude is awesome. He's the ultimate Santa Claus. And then you see him murder everyone in the streets.
So the movie is, yeah, that's basically what the movie is. And of course, I also love one of the things that Brandon Maggart adds to the role is, I guess he has a history in musical theater. I think both of Fiona Apple's parents, I think the mother was also a dancer as well. So he actually has like some kind of training in that. And you could kind of tell there's scenes where he's getting really into the Christmas spirit and he starts dancing. And it's actually pretty good. It doesn't seem like awkward, goofy dancing. It looks like somebody who knows how to dance. So the scene where he's in the hall dancing with the kids and the parents are all having fun, really cute, kind of adorable. He says something really dark to the kids, and then the kids and the parents are all alarmed for a second, and then he cuts it off with that ho ho ho, and everybody just laughs like, okay, it's not so bad. And then he goes off to do something ghastly right after that. And
I love that because he finishes murdering the people in the street, and you see that he's in full murder mode. He's got the look on his face like he wants to kill more. He wants to kill more naughty people. So he's watching these people at the Christmas party, and you think he's about to choose his victim or something. And all of a sudden, he gets pulled into the Christmas party, and he gets back into the Christmas spirit again. And I thought that was a really good scene when he starts talking to the kids, because he shows the difference between the good side and the bad side. You know, the naughty and the nice of Christmas. So if you're nice, all these great things are going to happen. Santa's going to bring you everything you want. But if you're naughty, he's going to he's going to get you.
And it looks for a second like he's scaring the children, and then it ends with complete laughter, and you think, oh, all is well, it's okay. And then it goes from another ghastly scene. You mentioned how well shot it is. The cinematographer was Ricardo Aronovic, and apparently he did more like European art house movies. And I could definitely see that in the way that it's shot. It has everything about it really glows. It has a certain type of almost shot how reminds me a little bit of Stand By Me in the terms of like the cinematography glows with the sense of nostalgia, but more colorful because the reds and the greens kind of shimmer, and it gives like, I don't know, it has a very warm feeling to the cinematography and the style that they chose to shoot it in.
Yeah, and I love the ending too. Now I want to discuss that ending, but how much do you think can we say?
Don't say too much. Let's try to dance around it as much as we could.
Okay, so let's say this. So a lot of people don't like this ending because you can't tell whether it was real or a fantasy. But for me, I think it's pretty obvious that it's a fantasy, because if you notice, back at the beginning in that first scene when it shows a very real flashback of this kid's memory, and all of a sudden that quick cutting of the editing shows Santa whisking up the
chimney
as if it's more like a childhood fantasy. It does that same thing at the ending.
That's true.
At first I thought, was that real? Did he actually end up being a real Santa Claus? But then I thought, that's the same type of thing he did. Is that quick cut, the quick little jump cut in editing right at the end. So I think that was pretty obvious that's what was in his head.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that interpretation. I think it's mostly in his head. I think that would change the dynamic of this movie if he was actually the real official Santa Claus, and I think it would justify too many of the things that he did.
Yeah,
if he was the real Santa Claus. So I like how it works like that. You mentioned you hadn't seen it and you were surprised you hadn't seen it. I don't think many people had seen it until like 5 or 6 years ago. It was like one of those movies that was mishandled. It was kind of lost. The distributors didn't really do a good job, so not many people really saw it. It wasn't really revived until I think 2014 or 2015, until it started getting like a Blu-ray and DVD releases. And I think since then it's starting to take on more of a cult following. And I noticed in horror groups around Christmas time, you hear about that movie more and more each year.
Yeah, it was John Waters that got this movie the recognition it deserved.
Yeah, in the 1980s, I believe. Yeah. But yeah, it's weird. I don't know. I guess they just didn't know how to handle it. I guess it's also because the movie went way over budget. It probably didn't have a good impression on the investors in the movie. But here it is now. I'm glad it's kind of been revived as like a newly found cult film that people are watching it again. I think it's probably one of the best Christmas horror movies.
Yeah, and this is another one. It just smacks of tradition.
Mm-hmm.
It already seems like a movie to me that I'm going to be playing every Christmas.
Yeah, and this is one of those Christmas horror movies where it's not just a Christmas horror movie, it is a full-on Christmas movie. It's not just a horror movie set during the holidays or a plot that could happen any time of the year that just so happens to be around Christmas time. Christmas traditions, the Christmas spirit, Santa Claus folklore, all of that is very integral to the storyline, where this is one of those Christmas horror movies that could not function without the holiday.
And some of it is downright feel good.
Mm-hmm.
It puts you in the Christmas spirit. It makes you feel good for a lot of it, and then it doesn't inject horror into Christmas. It kind of warps what Christmas is, and it warps it in a subtle way in a lot of ways.
It makes Christmas fit horror instead of shoving the horror into it.
Exactly. So in that way, that's why I think it's actually better than Silent Night, Deadly Night. Silent Night, Deadly Night was more fun. That's all.
Yeah.
Everything else I thought was superior in Christmas Evil.
I tend to agree with you. I do think that Christmas Evil is a better movie in terms of the acting, especially in terms of the way it's shot. It's a much more artful movie, and it's a lot more thought out. But Silent Night, Deadly Night is so sleazy and so trashy that it's kind of, I don't know, there's something about it that transcends traditional entertainment.
Yeah, much more of a dirty little movie.
Yeah, it definitely feels wrong. But they're both go on.
Isn't it more wrong to make it so wholesome? Isn't it almost even more wrong to make it wholesome before you go into depravity?
It might be, but I think the difference is that Christmas Evil leaves you with a little bit more of the Christmas spirit, so to speak, whereas Silent Night, Deadly Night makes you feel a little dirty after you watched it. I think that, I get what you mean. I think that's what makes Silent Night, Deadly Night more wrong, is you don't feel any redeeming Christmas elements in that movie.
Yeah, and in Christmas Evil, the guy really just wants to kill naughty people.
Yeah, and in Silent Night, Deadly Night, I think he wants to kill just naughty people, but he ends up killing people who are not actually naughty, just in his warped perceptive they're being naughty, and he must punish.
It becomes indiscriminate at one point.
Yeah, that definitely separates it. Would definitely make an interesting triple feature. And of course, because Silent Night, Deadly Night came after, and it had a large controversy around it, and it was pulled from the theaters, but the original distributors did not mishandle it. It's probably always going to have a notorious reputation because of the controversy that surrounded it when it came out, and the protests and the parents group and Siskel and Ebert crying about it and all that.
Yeah. They seem to cry about a lot of movies, didn't they?
Yeah. It's always funny. And I love Siskel and Ebert, but they're like those weird critics where I really like their opinions and their views on every kind of movie except horror.
Yeah, and
yeah, they didn't get horror.
I'd go so far as to say I'm inspired as a critic, especially from Roger Ebert.
Yeah, I love Roger Ebert.
Extremely good writer. He makes you feel something in his writing. He makes you feel something for the movie he's talking about, but he just didn't get horror. I mean,
not at all.
He didn't get the charm of it.
Yeah.
all he's seen was the negative aspects of it.
Yeah.
So
I only go to them for like movies for like Kubrick or Scorsese or Tarantino or something like that. I'd never consult their views on a horror flick.
Yeah, but don't you think it makes them lesser reviewers, lesser critics in the grand scheme of things if there's certain genres that their mind just caps off?
I mean, to a certain extent, I'd say which is a weird one to go off, but I'd say a little bit more Gene Siskel than Roger Ebert, because as much as Roger, I disagree with him, he did give positive reviews to certain horror movies if he didn't find them offensive in a certain way. It's not that he disliked the genre, it's just that it had to be something particular for him. If it went in any area that was a little too nasty or mean-spirited, it would automatically turn him off, where Gene Siskel seemed like any myth of horror would be enough to wag the finger at wag the finger. But hey, I mean, different strokes for different folks, I guess.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, you can't put a cap on any movies. You can't put a cap on what's worthy.
Definitely. I agree.
You know what I mean? You have to explore it, especially as a critic. You have to explore everything and have an open mind about every type of movie, no matter if it's not your thing or what. Be objective about it.
Before we move on, one thing I will say, the difference about Siskel and Ebert and Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert are critics from a completely different era, and they come from a more snobby era of film criticism.
Yeah.
And I like the old critics, but most of them didn't like horror, whereas modern critics have a much larger appreciation for the genre. And you notice that when you go back on like classic horror movies that had very negative reviews from most critics back in the day, most of today's critics tend to look back on those films as classics and revered. Yeah. So I've noticed that the shift is modern film critics are a lot more understanding of horror movies than past generations were.
And I think it makes it even funnier that Ghostman Rivera is actually inspired by Siskel and Ebert.
Yeah, that was the inspiration for this, even though they hated horror. So ours was like, we're going to be the horror. Siskel and Ebert.
Yeah, so I don't know if anybody's noticed, but the little intro that we're going to start putting on our videos, that's taken straight from
It's a parody.
Siskel and Ebert. Yeah,
it's a parody of the Siskel and Ebert intro. If you ever watched that, like back in the 90s, check them out. They're pretty interesting critics. Even though I disagree with them on so much stuff, they're always interesting to see what they had to say.
So Ghostman Rivera is basically, what if Siskel and Ebert had an open mind about horror?
Basically.
So the next one we're going to discuss, we fast forwarded all the way from 1980 to 2010 with Rare Exports, A Christmas Tale. It's a movie from Finland, directed and co-written by Jalmari Helander. It's Christmas Eve in Finland, and Santa Claus has been unearthed after an archaeological dig. When children start disappearing, a young boy and his father get help from fellow hunters to capture Santa in an attempt to sell him back to the corporation that sponsored the dig. What none of them bargained for was Santa's elves who are determined to free their leader at all costs. The standouts in this one is Jorma Tomila as Rauno, the dad, and Omni Tomila as Pietari, their real life father and son, and then Peter Jacobi as Pietari's elf. He's the main elf that they capture in the movie.
Elf. Is that what we're calling them?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're like a bunch of naked Santas, like skinny naked Santas.
This is the most perverted ideas of elves I've ever seen in the movie in any version, and it's almost scarring. This version of elves in this movie are tall, skinny, old, naked men with beards. Now it's like, this is an elf. Interesting. And I thought the Christmas Chronicle elves were freaky, but
but this is about as wholesome as you can get with old man's dick swinging around through the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. This is another one of those I think all of our Christmas, the Christmas horrors that we chose to speak about on this podcast, this is another one. I don't think any of them are like incidental Christmas horror movies, where horror movies that just so happen to take place on Christmas. Like Better Watch Out probably falls more into that category. You know, it has enough of the holiday spirit to make it feel Christmassy. This is another one where the entire storyline does not function without Christmas folklore.
Yeah, and it's taken directly from the European folklore that you talked about, where Santa's more of a menacing figure. If you're good, then he's a good figure. Then if you're naughty, he's evil.
That's such a cruel way to try to get kids to behave. If you're naughty, then some fat man in a red suit is going to come and eat you or take you up to the North Pole or punch you.
Yeah. But I also think this movie speaks to corporate greed, especially during the holidays, because of the way that, the corporation finds the real Santa and they exploit him for their gain, and the children must suffer for it.
Yeah. I think it's kind of meant to be on a commentary on how Christmas is supposed to be, and I know that it is, and technically it is a Christian holiday. It's about the birth of baby Jesus. But I think that Christmas has evolved into something beyond just a religious holiday, where I feel like it's, I wouldn't say just an American tradition. It's a global tradition. It's evolved into a season where people are supposed to get together, where you're supposed to be appreciative of your family, appreciative of your loved ones. You exchange gifts. The idea is that it's supposed to be that time of the year where we get together, we come together, and it's a nice, warm, fuzzy season. And I think this movie is about how a lot of corporations have turned the idea of Christmas, which is supposed to be wholesome and family-oriented, and turned it into a consumer thing where it's buy, where they just use Christmas, to exploit the greed of this country at certain times. So very interesting commentary on what Christmas should be and what Christmas kind of has turned into.
Yeah, and this is another one that shows the heartfelt, positive side of Christmas. It's I love the contrast in this movie. It goes from heartfelt, but also being gritty and mean at times, and it makes it feel like it's a polished movie, but it's still very raw.
Yeah,
that's what I liked about it. And a lot of CGI. I wish it didn't have as much CGI, but you can't tell a story this fantastical without having it. But it's pretty impressive CGI, and especially being in the snow at night helps it look more real for me.
Yeah, I really liked it. This had a very fantasy element to it, especially compared to Christmas Eve, where you could tell that the Christmas Evil were in that one. The holiday folklore is more idealized and imagined through someone's head. It's somebody's interpretation. The take in this Christmas movie is that Christmas is actually, like, Santa Claus is a very real thing, and so are the elves and stuff like that. And it's weird because this doesn't really pervert Christmas in a bad way, even though it's a Christmas horror movie. There's nothing about it that feels like, I don't know how to put, like, negative Christmas. It still ultimately feels like kind of almost a celebration of Christmas, and especially in the sense that it has a happy, very positive ending. This is one of those Christmas horror movies that you could put on and not worry about it leaving you with, like, a bad taste in your mouth about the holiday season. You'll probably feel, I don't know, generally festive after watching this one.
Yeah, it has something to say.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
And
And it has a positive message, and it has characters that have to learn a lesson.
I think also because the horror from this doesn't come from Christmas, it comes from people trying to exploit Christmas for their benefit. It doesn't actually come from the Christmas holiday itself. So I think that's another reason that this one also has kind of a positive holiday feel to it.
Yeah, and it has it takes the folklore and then it expands on it in a very clever way, I thought. Like
Yeah.
the whole thing of digging up Santa Claus and he's all frozen, so all the heaters in the town go missing along with all the kids.
Yeah.
I thought that was a very clever idea. And then when the Santa or slash elf is captured and they're not getting any kind of response for him, and then Pietari walks in and he's immediately fixated on Pietari because he's a naughty kid.
Hmm.
Oh, there's a naughty kid. So then it turns into them having to protect Pietari from the elves.
Yeah.
But the reveal of the actual Santa Claus, it's huge in scope and also in cleverness, I thought. And that's when the film uses the real folklore to awesome effect.
Yeah.
I thought it was very exciting, very intense, action-packed climax, dude, with the hundreds of elves, naked elves running through the snow. I thought that was really exciting. It felt like a lot of it felt like a small indie movie as far as the writing and the heart of it. But then when it got to the action and the adventure of it, it felt like a huge blockbuster in how much action and excitement that it had. I love that contrast.
Yeah, I could definitely see a lot. I could see a lot of that in there. It has a very intimate, small feel, and it it's weird. The fantasy comes out kind of organically because it doesn't even feel for like a long period of time like, a fantasy movie. It seems like it's more of like a realistic drama more than anything else. So I guess when the fantasy elements are introduced, it's done in a way that doesn't overdo or it doesn't betray the kind of realism that they set up in the first section of the movie, which I thought was kind of interesting.
And you see these adults going through this very real mystery, and then to the kids it's very fantastical to them, and then of course the adults won't listen. So you got the dichotomy of the way the adults are investigating it, and then the way the kids are investigating it, and then the way the kids are investigating it ends up being the right way. And then Pietari kind of takes over the whole movie, and he kind of bosses everyone around.
Little Rambo?
Little Rambo during the climax. He's like hanging from a helicopter, flying through the snowy wilderness, and and all these hundreds of elves coming after him. It was awesome.
So do you think this movie is attacking us Americans for the way, because we talked about how people exploit Christmas and like the people that are excavating and trying to like dig up Santa, and of course they're Americans who are the ones who are trying to dig up and exploit Santa for their own benefit and their own game. So I wonder if that was a little dig at our country and the way that we use Christmas.
Kind of wagging their finger at us.
Naughty, how dare you.
Look at your naughty traditions and the way you bastardize Christmas. How dare you?
Yep. I definitely could feel a little hostility towards the American version of Christmas in that one.
So we both like that one, am I correct?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. To be clear, I enjoyed every Christmas horror movie we're talking about today.
Cool. So the next one, we're going to fast forward even farther to 2018. This was an anthology Christmas film called All the Creatures Were Stirring, written and directed by David Ian McKendry and Rebecca McKendry.
Dr. Rebecca McKendry.
Yes, Dr. Rebecca McKendry. We have a bit of a history with her. We might get her as a guest. This is her and her husband's movie, and it's their first feature film. It's about two exes on an awkward Christmas Eve date go to a strange theater where they're treated to a bizarre collection of Christmas horror stories. The standout in this one for me was Graham Skipper, of course. He's the one in the wraparound. And then Jocelyn Donahue from House of the Devil. And I wish both their parts were bigger, but still, a huge ensemble cast in this. And what I like about it is I like anthology movies that are done by the same writer-directors.
There's more consistency to it.
Yeah, there's more consistency to it, but this one also gave me what I like about the variety of an anthology. Because some of these shorts, they don't even seem like they were written and directed by the same people.
Mm-hmm.
They seem very different from one another. But I thought they were all pretty solid. I think this movie gets a bum rap on from a lot of customer reviews, because critics actually liked it more than the audience did.
I noticed that it has generally positive reviews from critics and more negative reviews from audience members.
And I think it's just because it has such an indie feel to it, and it's so awkward and quirky in a lot of ways. And but this is another one that I enjoyed more. This one is very much a traditional movie where it needs to be watched every Christmas, because I definitely like this one more the second time watching it.
I actually think this one is really fun, and I think what makes this one really fun is how long is it? This movie's only 80 minutes long. There's like 5 stories in here and a wraparound, and it does it all so fast that like in a very brief period of time you feel like you've gotten a full package. You've gotten a good variety of different style of stories and different storytelling, and then the way that the wraparound introduces each story, where the basic wraparound is 2 lonely souls who don't really have anybody to be with around Christmas Eve, around the holidays, so they decide to go to strange little theater where they're putting on Christmas plays in a very strange setting, and that's how the stories come about. Each Christmas story that they're acting out on stage kind of turns into a cinematic story, and as soon as it's done, it goes back to it kind of winds back into the movie theater in that main wraparound. So I think it has a really good wraparound. And I don't think all of the segments are equal, but there's not one that I didn't enjoy in the entire thing. And I think some of them are actually pretty surprising, and I liked it because some of these were very atypical Christmas horror stories, not just some killer Santa in a suit or something like that. These were very imaginative, and I like that each story toys with the idea of the holidays and what it means in completely different ways.
And another reason I think why it's benefits from repeat viewing is also why I think a lot of the audience members didn't like it. It's because it's almost too many shorts to pack into this runtime. You know, where the shorts might run together for some people, but that's why it benefits from repeat viewing. If you've seen all those stories before, you can kind of just you're not wondering what's going to happen next. You're not wondering where this story is going to go. You can kind of just enjoy each one for what it is, and kind of take in the characters a little more and take in the message of the shorts a little more. And they seem a little more consistent watching it the second time. Yeah, because like one's like Dash Away All, about the van, where a guy finishes his Christmas shopping right at the end of the shopping day. So he goes into this parking lot, and these 2 girls are kind of trapped in this van, and they kind of try to lure him into being trapped as well. I thought that one was by far the most impressive one. It had the coolest story. It was the most dynamic one. So it makes the ones before it and after it kind of pale in comparison. But really, that's another thing where it benefits from repeat viewing. So you can kind of enjoy all of them in an equal way, instead of saying, "Oh, this one isn't as good as the last one," or anything like that.
I actually like the last story the most out of all of them, because I like the last story because what the last story sets up for me is, it seems like it's gonna. What I thought this is going, it almost seems like it's a werewolf movie. Werewolf short story, the way that the last story is set up, and then it switches into something completely different. It revolves around somebody who has friends, has a girlfriend, has a life, but around Christmas or Christmas Eve, he goes to somewhere secluded and chains himself up and refuses to be around anybody during that time, will not be around anybody during Christmas. And the first thing I think, okay, he's chaining himself up with these really big fucking chains to guarantee that he does not go anywhere and that nothing happens to him. What my mind goes to is like, so I'm guessing he turns into a werewolf or something around Christmas. And then his friends show up to the house that he's secluded at, and he's trying to get away with them, and he's panicking. He's like, get out of here. There's a reason I avoid you. And of course, they're just trying to spread, it's the holidays. They're trying to be positive and try to spend time with him. And I like the twist that it goes down, because what it turns out to be is something a lot different than what I expected it to be. And what it turns out to be is, I can't really explain it because I wouldn't even be able to spoil it properly. But I like that it explores the idea of Christmas, and there's something very sinister going on in the air. But once, I like that it has kind of a happy ending once the characters come to terms with the fact that they've been lonely, and that the fact that they just need to admit that they need to be around friends and family around Christmas, kind of embracing the spirit of the holidays. The horror kind of ends. And I like the entire sequence when it becomes very otherworldly, where you're not sure what is going on. I liked all of the short stories, but I think that one was my favorite because it really had a warm Christmas ending to it all. And I thought that the directions in it pulled me in a direction that I thought it was going, and then kind of twisted in a completely different direction. I enjoyed kind of having my expectations toyed with it, especially in the way that it was set up.
And that's one of the ones that I enjoyed and appreciated a lot more on the second viewing.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't thinking too much, this one was better than that one, or that one was better than this one. I kind of just latched on to the meaning more. Mm-hmm. A little more of what each short was trying to say, rather than just wondering what's going to happen next. But all of it, there's no clunkers. I don't think so. Because a lot of reviews said it was a mixed bag. I don't think so. Some are better than others, but that's the most, I would say. None of them are bad.
I would say that's the case with pretty much any anthology or anthology horror film, is that certain stories are always going to stand out, or certain ones are going to have more strengths than the other ones. But I liked that one. I liked the one that you mentioned where he's in the parking lot. I like the opener one at the office, especially because I think when the violence starts breaking out in the first short, it kind of took me off guard, and it took me by surprise, because I was just watching them open presents, and then it turns into like a Saw type of situation, very fast and unexpected. And I think that the brief runtime also helps, is that they, like you said, it's 5 stories and a wraparound story packed in 80 minutes, and that includes credits. So it's not even a full 80 minutes technically, is that there's never any downtime in the movie. Like, if you don't like one of the stories, if you're not enjoying the story you watched, it's over before you know it, and you're already jumping into something completely different. You don't really have time to reflect on it. I like that it has a very bouncy feel to it.
Yeah, and even good anthology movies, a lot of times the shorts are more effective than the wraparound. But here, I thought the wraparound was just as effective, or even more effective than some of the shorts. And
the wraparound,
that's what you need. To make a truly great anthology movie, you have to have a really good wraparound, and this one did.
And I think the wraparound also helps it feel a little bit less like an anthology movie than a lot of anthology. Because a lot of anthology movies, the wraparound just seems like it's there because there has to be something that unites the story. There has to be some kind of excuse for all of these stories to be sitting next to each other. Not always the case. There are a few anthology movies or anthology horror movies that don't give a wraparound, that just give you straight story to story to story. But the wraparound in this one feels kind of integral to what the stories are, and the fact that it's so integral to all the stories, the wraparound, and the fact that they're directed consistently by the same people, Dr. Rebecca McKendry and David McKendry, who's her husband, gives it a very unified feel, more unified feel than the majority of anthology horror movies I've seen.
And it's actually a stronger wraparound than I've seen in most anthology movies. And
because it makes it almost like it's not even an anthology.
Exactly, like it's a part of the whole story. And I love how in the wraparound they show the actors like crudely reenacting the short before and after each short. So I thought that was a really nice touch. And it makes that the last, how the last short that they that they reenact on stage is their own. And I love the whole effect of the impact on the characters, and it kind of that's when they start thinking that something sinister is going on. I thought that was a really good dynamic.
I also like that location, that theater that they're going to, where they see the short stories, because I don't know how to describe it, but the way that the stage looks, it's just people walking up on stage, this very strange lady walking on stage, putting like a title card for whatever the short is going to be, and you just see some actors kind of pantomiming out the story, and then it goes into like the cinematic version. But what's interesting is that the what weirds me out about it, and I guess it's supposed to be kind of otherworldly, is the theater doesn't seem to have a back. What I mean, when they're standing on the stage, it looks like they're standing on a black background, an endless black background. You cannot see the end of the theater, so it has a very strange quality where if I stepped into the theater like that, where you can't even see the sets or anything in the background, it's just characters against an endless black background, I probably would get a little bit creeped out and think, what am I doing here on Christmas? I really like that location, and whatever they did to make the stage does look almost like there's nothing on the stage.
It's like a little art house theater. And when I first seen the film, Rebecca screened it in a similar theater to that. It might have even been the same one. It looks very similar.
And I'm pretty sure most of the audience knows if you're into horror, but if you don't, Dr. Rebecca McKendry is one of the world's foremost experts on the horror genre. I'd say her and Joe Bob Briggs are probably the two most informative and educated people I could think of in terms of knowing everything about the horror genre, knowing its history, knowing things that the average person just would not be aware of. And she has her she had Shockwaves podcast. I believe that they moved to something different, and of course she has her own podcast as well. But she's a brilliant woman.
I think her new podcast is The Colors of the Dark.
The Colors of the Dark. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. But I went to a couple of her lectures too. She gives lectures for the Miskatonic university, it's like a horror university. I went to a 3-hour lecture that she gave of aquatic horror. Oh, it's fascinating and informative, and she has a lot of fun with it. You can tell that she's fascinated with the horror genre, and she also has a lot of fun with it. She's almost kid-like in her glee for the genre, and you can see that comes across in this movie. All the creatures are stirring. So I'll quickly run through the shorts in this. Okay. It starts out with the wraparound with Graham Skipper, and then it goes into Stockings Were Hung. That's the one with the office party where Secret Santa's gone wrong, and it turns into survivor horror like Saw with Jocelyn Donahue. And then it goes into Dash Away All. That's the one with the van where the two girls who are trapped in their van by an evil entity. Then it goes to All Through the House. That's the guy from Two Broke Girls. It's where it's kind of a Christmas Carol type of story. Really good. And then it goes to A Rose Such a Clatter, where the guy hits a deer and Rudolph kind of comes for revenge. I thought that one was really cool. And that one could have used a little higher budget, I think, because the story kind of got lost in the what you need to do as an independent filmmaker to make something work.
It's also the shortest story out of all of them. I noticed when I was watching it, I even checked, I think it happens in less than 10 minutes compared to the other ones, which feel like they're 12, 13 minutes. It's the most sparse one. Yeah.
And then In a Twinkling is one with Constance Wu. The one that you liked is one that a lot of friends show up uninvited.
Yeah.
That was a really good, solid one. And then the wraparound ends up being And to All a Good Night.
Yeah. And just so you're aware, the other podcast that Rebecca McKendry has is Nightmare University, which is an awesome podcast because it's a one-woman podcast. There's literally no guest on it. It's entirely her giving some kind of lecture or kind of like history lesson on something very specific in horror. It could be a specific genre. It could be a specific film, or it could be a specific franchise that she's fond of, but it's all very entertaining. I wanted to mention I did attend one of her lectures, I think for Nightmare University, one of the episodes, and it was the Hellraiser one. And I
Yeah.
guess that's her favorite horror film franchise. She even has a tattoo of it. So, like, if you're watching this, you know that you are watching a film made by somebody who loves the genre, somebody who really adores everything about it. And it also seems like it comes from somebody who really wanted to make a couple of them, because it's her and her husband. They really wanted to make a true blue Christmas movie, despite the fact that it is horror. And I think that's what I liked about all of these movies, that this one feels like a Christmas movie that deals with Christmas spirit and togetherness in it, and togetherness in the holidays, but it does it in a way that's still horror, but the horror never intrudes on the season itself.
Yeah. And if you watched it and didn't enjoy it, I urge you to watch it again.
Mm-hmm.
I promise you you'll like it better the second time. Because you get a lot more of what they're going for. Because like I said, it's a little too much story, too many stories, too many characters and stuff in the short run time to really fully enjoy it on one watch. You got to watch it a second time to fully enjoy it and see the message they were going for in each one. And it seems even more clever to me watching it for the second time.
Yeah. And it is available on Shudder. I know that for a fact. I don't know if it's available on Prime. I watch it through Shudder, but I know that it's available on the Shudder app. If you have it, check it out. It's definitely something to put you in the holiday mood.
And also because we need to see more movies from Rebecca McKendry.
Yeah, I would like to see her do more. I mean, I tend to enjoy horror movies made by people who love the genre. You could tell when you're watching a film that was made with a lot of love and care, and I think this one is definitely made with that.
And I love her husband David's sarcastic sense of humor that he brings into their stuff.
Yeah, definitely has like a kind of a playful streak in it too as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so those were our Christmas horror selections this year.
And lo and behold, it's Christmas horror is what got me into the Christmas spirit this year, because this has been a crazy year, unprecedented stress in this year, and it makes the Christmas horror seem that much more effective and profound, and it kind of actually does the opposite of what it's meant to do. It's meant to almost bastardize the holiday and kind of warp it, but it's actually made it more of a holiday for me.
I think it's because most of our selections right now that we're talking about are movies that actually try to tackle the Christmas spirit and actually try to impart a sense of holiday cheer into the audience despite the horror that's happening in it. Whereas a movie like Silent Night, Deadly Night, I don't think it does that. I think it's very Christmassy, like in terms of like the imagery and how it is, but it leaves you with the very, that was a very nasty feeling. Another one that I wanted to mention, not reviewing, is Red Christmas, which is with Dee Wallace. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
It's on Shudder. I kind of enjoyed it, but I almost had to put I put like a traditional Christmas movie on, because that's like a Christmas horror movie that left me with like a negative feeling after it was over. And I'm like, ugh. It left me with a very very negative feelings, and it was like, that does not make the holidays seem warm or good or friendly at all. And I think the ones that we chose to talk about are a little bit more centered in trying to orient the audience to the holiday itself.
Yeah, Red Christmas is really mean.
Yeah, it's vicious.
It doesn't have a positive message like these others.
I think that's what kind of separates like the two different types of Christmas horror movies. Christmas horror movies either use the holiday to like explore the meaning of it, explore the folklore, inject it with some horror, but still try to like capture the Christmas spirit. And then stuff like Red Christmas or Silent Night, Deadly Night likes to use the positive iconography of the holiday and pervert it into something twisted and wrong. And I think those are like ultimately the two different types of Christmas movies you're going to get, Christmas horror movies you're going to get.
Yeah, and the three that we talked about today, there's plenty of meanness in them, but it's just that the overall message of it is positive.
Yeah, and they're very Christmassy. Before we go, other Christmas, just a couple non-traditional Christmas recommendations, because like a lot of us love the holiday season, a lot of us love Christmas and everything to it, but that doesn't mean that everybody wants to see sentimental Christmas movies, which is there's nothing wrong with it if you're into that. You could watch Miracle on 34th Street or It's a Wonderful Life, and those are all good movies. Or Home Alone is probably my favorite of like the traditional Christmas movies. I watch that every year with the family around Christmas. But if you want to get into the Christmas spirit without seeing something treacly or sentimental, you could check out any of these three films. Also check out, I mean, I'm sure a lot of the audience, Batman Returns. I think that's an unconventional Christmas movie that borders on being a Christmas movie. You should check out Eyes Wide Shut if you're into something like that, because admittedly, yep, there you go. That's National Lampoon's
Christmas Vacation.
Christmas Vacation, yeah. I was gonna say
it's always something.
Julia, yeah. So there's all kinds of holiday options. Of course, classics. Die Hard. That the perennial argument that everybody loves to have is Die Hard a Christmas movie or not? I don't think it really matters. Lethal Weapon. That's another one. There's all kinds of exciting stuff to watch around Christmas time if you don't want to see a movie that's too Christmassy. There's plenty of Christmas horror. And, of course, you got your Die Hards, Batman Returns, Eyes Wide Shut. Lots of stuff to choose from around the holidays.
Yes, and call up your lonely friends. Call up your lonely family. We can't. A lot of us can't get together like we want to this year. So call your loved ones. Zoom them. Let's make this a positive Christmas after such a negative year.
I think so too. And also, not everybody is doing well right now. We know that, especially like right now in this country, a lot of people are broke, and this is not going to be the best Christmas for a lot of people. If you know anybody who's struggling or anything, and if you have, and of course I know a lot of people out here are kind of struggling, but if you have anything extra that you can give to somebody out there, I'd encourage you to do it. There's this thing where you could actually, you look it up, you could sponsor different families who are going through hardships of the year if you can give them, donate toys. There's lots of things that you could do right now to try to spread a little bit more positivity in this very negative time that we're living in. Try to close 2020 off on a more happy note.
Yeah, let's use this time to make Christmas what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
A happy time, a time for family. And thanks to technology, you don't have to be that far away. You might not be able to see them in person, but you can meet face to face just like we're doing now on Zoom.
Yes.
Or FaceTime, or just give them a call,
Mm-hmm.
Let's make this Christmas more positive.
I agree.
I hate to be sappy, but it's usually a cool thing for horror fans to go against the positive message of Christmas, but we need it this year.
Yeah, I think so too. I agree. So, Merry Christmas to everybody out there. If you don't celebrate Christmas, happy holidays. If you're Jewish, of course, happy Hanukkah. Whatever it is you celebrate, do it. If you're with the family or you're by yourself, just try to be positive this year, and let's make 2021 a better year. We're going to be taking a break from the podcast. We will return in 2021. We will not be podcasting for the rest of the year, which actually is only a couple weeks anyway, so it sounds like a bigger break than it actually is. And when we turn in 2021, we will be marking our 100th episode. Decided to save it for next year. This is our 99th episode, our little Christmas special. Hope we do another Christmas special next year, concentrating on different Christmas horror films.
Yeah, this is a big milestone for us. So I'd like to thank everyone who's been along with us on this journey. I never thought we'd get to 100 episodes, but here we are.
Here we are. Well, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year. Until next year, folks, Happy Horror.
Happy horror. And Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.